What's up, guys? Tommy Carrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got an incredible guest today. Show starts right now. Brigadier General Dr. Robert Spalding III, author of The Stealth War. Got you for 30 minutes, so I'll get right to it. I don't want to regurgitate your book to you because obviously you wrote it and you know all about it. But I've listened to it 3 times in the last week, and at the end you have your guide to combating Sino-aggression. And I emailed you some of my own questions, but I've reformulated them a little bit, and so I'll get right to it so I don't burn through my time. So the first one was, have you ever heard of the quote, it's a Buddhist quote, there are 2 ways to go about resisting pain? And the analogy is you can walk around the world barefoot and cover the entire earth in leather, or you can make leather shoes, which, choose the easier one. So at the basis of what you describe as China at the very beginning of all of their multi-step tactics, they find a nation with the resource that they need, and then everything else comes after that. What do you think about removing the need for that resource, the creating leather shoes instead of covering the world in leather? Do you think that there is any opportunity for the U.S. to completely cut themselves off from China through asteroid mining? Do you think that that is a viable move to, because I know Jeff Bezos is interested in that. Do you think there is any viability in that to get rid of our need for China?
It's not the access to the resources, it's the processing of the resources. So what they do is not only do they not have environmental concerns with regard to, for instance, rare earth metals, which our EPA does. So they put onerous restrictions on those companies, make it really expensive to process the rare earth metals that we have here in the United States. Mm-hmm. And the Chinese subsidize it because they want to control it. So it's not access to the minerals itself. It's really just making a strategic determination that we need to process those so that we're not held hostage by a foreign power.
Okay. Yeah, because I've read, I believe it was your book mentioned it, but I looked up on it more. China controls 90% of the rare earth metal trade, but only 30% of the actual supply.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting and an important note. The other thing you mentioned in it is towards the end, investing in AI, as well as you use the analogy of the game Go, where they have to surround all the pieces to eliminate it. And that's one thing I've been thinking about a lot and I've spoken about on this podcast is the need for a hyper-intelligent AI, because I've never played football in my life. You could give me 100 players and I would mess it up, versus you go to a Bill Belichick or a Tom Brady, you give them 5 players, but they'll maneuver those 5 pieces better than most people could maneuver 100. Do you think that we should be putting a greater importance and a greater amount of funding? You mentioned the funding under Carter and Reagan towards things like the F-117 Nighthawk or even SDI. Do you think we should be putting as I said in our email, a Manhattan Project-esque tone or hurried nature on AI so that we can meet China on the multifaceted, multi-tiered, seemingly multi-dimensional chessboard as they meet us on every different avenue with unrestricted warfare, from their students to fishing to the Belt and Road Initiative? Do you think that adding a hyper-intelligent AI could almost be a force multiplier to the things we already have?
It's not about AI, it's about data. They have access to all the data because they have no data restrictions. The challenge we have is that, individual companies, individuals, government has data. In China, it's just one big pool of data that the government has access to. The problem is it's not secure and they don't protect private information. So the challenge that we have is how do we use the data that's the resource of the United States people, of the American people? How do we use that in a way that protects their privacy, protects the security of their own intellectual property, but at the same time allows us as a nation to harness the data we have to make things better, cure cancer, cure Alzheimer's, figure out how to make our transportation and logistics more efficient. All those things are things that AI can be useful for, but without the data, the comprehensive cumulative data that companies like Google or Alibaba collect, we're not going to be able to do that. The problem we have today is that Google doesn't want to work with the government, and Alibaba only works for the government. Yeah. So there's a disparity here, and it's really about how do we project democracy and free trade, rule of law, and self-determination in a digital world where the underlying technology was built for authoritarians. The open data model is perfect for authoritarians because you accumulate data, you accumulate power. What we need is a way to lock down the data, ensure it's protected, but then also give AI the ability to have access to that data that protects privacy, that protects the intellectual property of the individual, but allows those macro effects that we can use on our society to be obtained. That's not AI. That's about a data system for the United States. And that's where on page 19, I say we need a secure nationwide 5G network. We need access to the data, but we need to also protect the privacy and security of each individual and each company's data.
Yeah, it's almost like the quote, "You can only be as good as the world allows you to be." We're fighting someone that has no morals, no bottom tier, and we're trying to hold they're street fighting, and we're still trying to keep the gloves on and not get any points against us.
We don't even know what the fight is. We don't even know we're fighting. That's the problem.
Yeah.
We think everything's fine. No, we're getting our ass handed to us. That's the problem. So, data, so when you think about what I'm talking about, every bit of your data is locked down. It's encrypted. Nobody can have access to it. But you know what? You want a loan, right? You want a loan to buy a car or a house. You want to be able to use Google Maps. Okay, well then you have to have an agreement with those companies to use their resources. And the agreement is they have access to your data, and then they promise you that I'm only going to use it for certain things. And then you find out that they didn't do that. Then you can revoke access to that data. That's the kind of system that I'm talking about, where you have fine control, and every relationship that you have in a digital sense is based on trust. Based on trust, because you have power over your data. Today, we've created a system where only tech companies, large tech companies, and authoritarian regimes have power over data. Nobody else has power over data.
Yeah, I don't know. So going to sort of, like you said, we don't even know that we're fighting. Most people don't want to know that we're fighting or have their head in the sand. And you said at best is negligence, at worst is traitorous and complicity. You mentioned the hacking and the sabotage of the Trans-Siberian pipeline, which I had read about in Hoffman's Dead Hand, about the largest non-nuclear explosion seen from space. Do you think that is a necessary move for us against China, to, instead of completely block them off, give them fried stuff, backdoor access, sabotage, ready?
Certainly, when it comes to theft. And particularly military capability, that may be an option, but at the basic level, we produce innovation, technology, talent, and capital. If those things stay in this country or only migrate to other democracies, we're going to be fine, because those other democracies practice rule of law, and there's intellectual property protections and the whole 9 yards.
Sure.
If we allow it to go to China, then we're basically allowing, our future to be taken from us. And so we don't have to do anything about China. We just have to protect the resources that come out of a free society. And that's the whole point. So protect the bounty that comes from the fact that we're a free people. We've just been giving it away. And allowing it to be stolen, primarily because we don't have a secure data system, but mostly just because many people in this country just wanted to get rich and allowed it to be taken, or it enabled their political power. So this is the problem that we have, that the wealth of this nation, innovation, technology, talent, and capital. By the way, we have 40% of the investable capital in the world. Capital drives business. You don't have money to run your business, you don't have a business. So this is the problem. It needs to go towards American businesses. These 70,000 plus communities that lost factories because China entered the WTO, nobody's investing in those communities. You can't get a business loan there to build a factory. Nobody will finance that. If you're a startup, a high technology startup, nobody will give you money. Oh, let me take that back. China will give you money.
Yes, you're right. My dad's from a small town in New England, and you go to it and you can see the last 30, 40 years how it's dying from the center because there's a paper mill. That's just one of the 70,000 that was just kicked overseas. It used to be the center of paper research in the world. It was one of the first places in the United States to have electricity. Now it's a ghost town. So on that note, with cheap labor, because again, that is one of their strong suits, or what you said is now even China is outsourcing cheap labor to Africa. Do you think that the playing field will be leveled with automation? And then by leveling that playing field, so you go from dirt cheap labor at, say, Foxconn, where you're giving people a couple cents an hour and you have nets so they don't commit suicide, do you think that we can level the playing field with automation, and then the coveted resource is energy to drive those automated machines? Do you think that if we level that playing field, it will then come down to who can get the cheapest energy?
So let me go back to the
Sure,
town in New England.
sure.
Not only did that paper mill go away, but each of those jobs had health care and retirement benefits
Yeah.
associated with that, right? So we're talking about health care and retirement benefits today, and everybody's upset. Well, the government needs to give us more. Well, that company was giving that town, the people of that town, those things. Now who has to pick it up when the company goes away?
Yeah.
The government, right? So what this association with the Chinese Communist Party is creating a socialism as a second order effect of the impact of losing that factory. Now, to your point about cheap labor, it's not cheap labor. In fact, it's fairly equivalent now. It's that they subsidize the companies. The companies get free electricity, for example. The government gives them free electricity. On the labor, there is no labor standards. There's no environmental standards. They have scrubbers on their coal plants. They just don't turn them on, right? So the place is full of black smoke.
Yeah.
The challenge we have here is that we, created environmental protections, labor protections, all of these things in this country, and then we told the companies, well, you don't have to abide by those because you can just go to China and make higher margins. And we allowed that to happen. Okay, so we offloaded slavery and pollution. But ultimately, your question is about automation and low energy costs, and that's what I'm banging on all the time. We have some of the lowest energy costs in the OECD. We have low corporate tax rates. We have opportunity zones all over the country. All these communities want manufacturing, but you can't get it because companies like Blackstone are sending money to China and not investing it in our own communities. Now, where's Blackstone getting their money? They're getting their money from the pension funds.
Yeah.
So the pension funds are saying, I need you to make a bigger return because you know what? I don't have people paying into these pensions anymore. Nobody's working. So the pension, I need higher return because I have all these retirees I have to pay for. So Blackstone says, I got to make higher margins in order to meet your requirements. I have to go to China. So it's this never ending cycle where we're in a death spiral. This country's in a death spiral, and it's created because we don't understand the underlying problem is that we offloaded these factories and jobs from America and really destroyed the blue collar, the working class, and the seed corn of our entire civilization, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody is, just grows up in a system where they can be white collar.
Yeah.
We have like an ecosystem, an economic ecosystem. And we so just like in a biological ecosystem, you kill off, you got the deer, you got the wolves, and you got the grass. You kill one of them off, you got collapse, right? Yeah. So what we have here is economic collapse in a sense that we have all of these billionaires making lots of money because they've offloaded all this stuff, and then they're selling cheap stuff from Walmart to the American people who don't have jobs. This is a problem. Yeah. And so, it's really a simple, actually, problem to fix. And your point about automation and energy, absolutely. That's what 5G is about. It's about automating your factories. And you pair that with, the price of natural gas here in the United States, it's like they're actually burning it off because they have so much.
Good Lord. Yeah, you had that great quote from, I believe you were quoting Steve Bannon. It was, let's be perfectly frank, and I'm paraphrasing it. Let's be perfectly frank. Slaves in China build appliances funded by London and Wall Street for consumers in the West on welfare and unemployment. Is you're like, it's not pretty, it's not sexy. That's what it is. And to me, that was like the smack across the face. That was like, oh damn. So with energy, I've had on multiple nuclear physicists on here, ones that doing current nuclear fission research, ones that worked on atomic bombs and thermonuclear weapons, but also two men from Oxford that are working on a fusion. Fusion is obviously, as you know, you're an intelligent individual, the holy grail. It's always just around the corner. ITER, ITER is the International Fusion Research in, I believe it's France. Everyone's doing that except China. They're doing their own. China is building nuclear reactors. We are not. Fusion is the holy grail. That is, you can run it. What is it? You need 80 train cars of coal every day to get the same amount of power that half a train car of uranium per year can do, which doesn't hold a match to, I believe it's a milliliter of deuterium for an entire year. So it is the power of the sun. It is quite literally the thing that powers our world. Do you think that we should be doing, and I know I keep dropping this word, so it's probably losing importance and impact, a Manhattan Project towards nuclear fusion? If we can get that seemingly endless resource, and by the way, you can extract the necessary fuel from seawater, if we could have that seemingly endless power source, you could just run automation. You could run it to almost what Eisenhower used to say, power too cheap to meter. We just never fulfilled it. Do you think if we really push for an operable nuclear fusion reactor, we could run everything at power too cheap to meter, and thus automation factories and kick China in the ass?
So what we need is an energy policy, an energy strategy for the United States. We have to recognize we have energy needs today, we have energy needs in the midterm, and we have energy needs in the long term. And so we have to understand and take account of the resources we have. We have enormous natural gas and other petroleum reserves. We should take advantage of those while we can. We have wind power, we have solar power. We should take advantage of those too. We have molten salt reactors, thorium, right?
Yeah.
Not enriched uranium actually can power, very safe, fail-safe reactors. And we should have those. And then, of course, we should work on fusion. But what we ought to have is a balanced strategy that actually allocates resources according to what the language that's used in the military or in government research is, technology risk level, right? So right now, fusion's a high TRL, high technology risk level. Thorium reactor is kind of a medium. And then we know that natural gas is not a technology risk level. Yeah. So that we ought to be investing right now in the near term in getting molten salt reactors. Oh, by the way, they don't put off a lot of nuclear waste like the old pressurized, heavy water reactors.
Yeah.
Now, and you can't make weapons from it. And then we ought to be continue, just like venture, investors do. The government ought to be throwing money at fusion research. Yeah. But there ought to be a lot of different examples going on. We've got this big ITER in France. Yeah. Why don't we have at least 10 different projects going on where you balance your risk out? I mean, no venture capitalist in his right mind would say, I'm going to put all my money into this one project. Maybe it'll work. Yeah. No, they have like 20, 30 projects and one of them is going to work, but they don't know which one. They don't try to presuppose it. This is common sense. But, in government, we don't have, common investment sense because they're politicians. They're not businessmen. They don't know how to spend money, and we shouldn't be given money to spend. But, at the end of the day, somebody has to make an energy strategy for the United States. Chevron's not going to do it. Chevron doesn't care about that. That's not their job. But the government needs to have people that understand business, understand the energy industry, and balances risks and say, okay, we need natural gas now. Maybe we're moving to molten salt reactors, but eventually we'll get this fusion thing that we've been talking about for decades. Yeah. But, it's going to take some time, and I think we ought to spread our money around. The problem here is we don't spend any money on science and technology research. We were spending 2% of gross domestic product during the Cold War. Now nothing. So, let's start spending money. You know who's spending money on science and technology research? The Chinese.
Yes, it is their religion. For an atheistic communist nation, that is their religion. Yeah, you said it in your book, 2% of GDP towards things like stealth research, and now it's something like what, 0.5? Not even. I mean, we look at things like, how do we go to the moon in 69? Well, it's 5% of GDP. Like, if you want it done, it can happen.
It can happen. Of course it can.
Yeah. The way I describe it is like, man, there's nothing better than when another guy tries to flirt with your wife or girlfriend. There's nothing that's going to kick your ass into gear to get in the gym more. A little competition gets you going. I think we could look at China as a positive, not them, but hell, what is going to get you out of bed?
So you got a good point right there, right? Competition.
Yes.
So now what the politicians on the right and left think about? They think about competition between either the right or the left. It's not a competition with each other. It's a competition with the Chinese Communist Party. They want to take us over. They want us to be in the dumps, right? That's what when I was at the White House, we got in a big fight. You know, who's a panda hugger? Who's not? I don't care. Doesn't matter. Yeah. That's past. Put in the past.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how to fix our shit right now. It's about America. It's not about right or left. You know, DC wants to convince you that if you don't get all the Democrats in office, you know, it's going to be terrible. If you don't get all the Republicans in Congress, it's just going to be terrible. Baloney. It's about America. It's about the Constitution. It's about preserving our republic. And the competition is not the other side. The competition is the Chinese Communist Party. And you know who says that? A lot of our billionaires. You know who else says that? A lot of our allies and partners. Hey, the Chinese got something going. They're growing their economy. What are you guys doing? Fighting.
Bickering at each other, where you said, he said, see, and meanwhile the tick on the world is just swelling. It has anaconda tentacles. That's the imagery I kept getting reading your book, was just an anaconda slowly going around the world, and it's getting ready to constrict. We can't see it because it's in slow motion. You mentioned venture capitalists in multiple different angles. It's beating it to death. The Manhattan Project, we had multiple different enrichment centers for fissile material in case one of them didn't work. We had the B reactor. We had the ones in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Lawrence Livermore. We were putting it all together. They didn't even know they had a factor of 10 margin of error. They were like, you know, we might need a gram of uranium. We might need 10. So it was just throw it all over. Even, I mean, think about the ones we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those were two completely different ones. It was implosion and gun type, plutonium and uranium. We spread it all. And then in case that didn't even work, going off into a side tangent, we were doing that thing where we were going to put incendiary bombs on bats and throw them in Tokyo. So we have all these different plans going about it. So yeah, we should be having our own eater here. We should be doing other things. What about helium-3 mining on the moon? What about the idea of putting kilometer-wide solar panels in space and then beaming it back down to Earth via microwave radiation? There are multiple different things we should be doing. Got 5 more minutes with you. Do you think that, I wanted to touch on it because you mentioned it in your book, not really in the way that I thought, SDI, do you think that, or do you know that, do you think that that would be our final, all else fails against China? Do you think we do have an operational SDI with directed energy weapons? Because at the very end, you have to prepare for the absolute worst. It's like, be kind to everyone you meet, but have a plan to kill everyone you meet. All else fails. Do you think that there is importance to have an impenetrable missile shield, or do you think that really can't be done? Is that just impossible?
What's important is the preservation of our society, and there's two components to that. There's creating a nation that enables each individual to reach their true potential, and then there is, you know, protecting us from a military attack. So if you go back to the Cold War, there's a good book, Thinking About Defense. It's written by a guy named Lieutenant General Glenn Kent. And it's a short book he wrote while he was at Rand. And he was a mathematician for the Air Force, a 3-star when he retired. And what he figured out is in 1958, I believe is the year, it would cost $23 billion to build a missile shield over the United States that would protect 70% of the population. Here's the kicker. If you want to protect 90% of the population, it would cost 6 times more.
Yeah. And
here's the bigger kicker. For every dollar of offense the Soviets added, you had to add $6.
Yeah.
So when he looked at it, he said, we're going to go bankrupt trying to create a missile shield. So what did they do? They said, okay, if you do anything, we're going to destroy the Soviet Union. So they basically turned it into, we're gonna build our society. We're gonna build, great things like the Eisenhower National Highway System. We're going to, really create this high power economy with the space race and all of this science and technology research and all of these grants for STEM education degrees. So our scientists and engineers can be the smartest in the world and really come up with technology and new businesses. And the Eisenhower Highway System allowed for, transportation that grew commerce across the country. And then what we're going to tell the Soviets is, you do anything and we're going to use these nuclear weapons that we have and we'll just wipe you out. How about that? Is that a good idea? No. What do they say? Well, we don't want to be wiped out. Okay, well, then we're not going to do anything. Yeah. And that went on for 40 years. And you know what? We won. Why? Yeah. Because they went bankrupt and we didn't, right? Our economy was growing. The end of the Cold War, we're the most powerful. What do you think China's doing right now?
Same thing.
The same thing. They're watching us go bankrupt. So they built this very effective military in the Indo-Pacific. And we're like, how do we break that? More trillions, more trillions, more trillions. We can break it. No, we can't. It's in their backyard. And so if we really want to, think about the Indo-Pacific, if we really want to protect, countries like Japan and South Korea and Taiwan, well, then maybe we have to think differently like we did during the Cold War. We can't spend all our money buying weapons to break a problem that was designed not to break the bank in China. It's designed to break the bank in the United States, and that's what it's doing. Because instead of spending on science and technology research, STEM education, infrastructure, and manufacturing like we were doing during the Cold War, we're spending on F-35s and two nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, nuclear subs. All of these exquisite weapon systems that when you look at what the array of weapons that China has, so now you got a maybe $10 million missile that can take out a $30 billion aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. You can't fight against that. I've got 3 more minutes. I could talk to you for 10 hours. So 3 quick questions. 1, what is it like to fly B-2 Spirit? What is it? What is that like, man?
It's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. And the cool thing about flying the B-2 is I could fly that. Really tremendous, the best weapon system ever designed in the history of mankind to this point. Mm-hmm. And then I could get in a T-38 that was, designed to teach pilots to fly the F-100 series fighters and pull Gs and go upside down and do mock dogfights. So I had the best of both worlds. You could fly both airplanes at Whiteman because you only got to fly the B-2, once or twice a month.
I'm so jealous. Yeah. I called Northrop Grumman a couple months ago and tried to get a comment on the future, the B-21. And I was promptly chewed out, not to mention that. So I was like, okay, all right, I won't bring that up. 2 more questions, or second to last question. So when I had on Mike Durant, the quote unquote Black Hawk Down guy, I asked him about what he thought about the stealth helicopter that went down during the Bin Laden raid. And all politics aside, what did he think about the helicopter? And he cracked a smile and said, man, I'd like to take that thing for a ride around the block. What do you think about all these Pentagon reports coming out about UFOs? Is all political and philosophical implications aside, is there a part of you as a pilot that looks at that thing and you're like, I'd like to take that thing for a whip?
Well, I've never seen anything. So I tend to be skeptical. Okay. I'm a Catholic. Okay. So I believe in God, but everything else, you got to show me, right? And these pictures where you got, fuzzy videos. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Do we have UFOs? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I tend not to believe that we do, but maybe I'm just too skeptical.
I'm with you. I want to believe. I'm not biased. I want to believe. It's just, it's 2020 and we still can't get anything.
Well, I mean, here's a question. Are they doing recon so they can wipe us out? I mean, well, that's the thing that you got to be worried about. You look at what's going on down here, that could be a possibility. Okay. These guys, brains are really tasty. We're going to.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the scary thing.
One thing I always think about is if us and the Soviets did proxy wars in the East, who's to say that this right now isn't a proxy war? Why wouldn't they use us? That kills me. Last question. So I'm sure you're aware of the website Reddit. It's you ever use Reddit? Have you ever used Reddit? Reddit?
Yeah, my son, right after I left the military, my son got me to do an AMA,
Yeah.
and like 3 people asked me questions, and I'm like,
Screw that.
I'm like, come on.
Well, Reddit, screw them. That's terrible. That's a sin. Well, last year, Reddit took $300 million from Tencent, which, as you know, they CCP company. And since then, they have scaled up censorship to a level that would make Orwell blush.
Right.
Last year, early this year, they kicked off the subreddit, the Donald, which got everyone going. They kicked that off and they created their own website. It's just called thedonald.win. They love you there. There are memes of your face photoshopped, and it's you beating up China, or you fighting Winnie the Pooh, or it's always Robert Spalding. It's pictures of you, and it's just a jawbone you could sharpen a blade on. I just want you to know they absolutely love you there.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
More people pitch your book. Have you read Stealth War? What are you doing? So I just wanted to say that they love you, and
that's cool.
They do. They really do. So is there any chance I can just get you to say, shout out to Donald? They love you.
Shout out to Donald?
The Donald.
Shout out to the Donald.
Yes, they love you. You're an American hero.
Look, I don't care if you're from the right or the left.
Sure.
I'm an American. I stand for the Constitution. This country is great. I don't hate any Americans. I don't care what you think. Right. But, we can't be a Marxist country. We can't, this country is a melting pot. It's really about us all coming here and just throwing away tribalism, because everybody that comes here is an immigrant. So they leave behind their baggage of the past and their associations, and they come here and they basically build a life. And they build a life, most of them, particularly the immigrants, which is why I like hanging out with immigrants the most, because they're like, this place is great. You can do whatever you want. Nobody's there to persecute you. You don't have to go, pay somebody's uncle so that you can get a license to run your business. People don't understand that because they've been here too long, and they don't go and live in other places. And, they say, oh, this place is terrible. And there's so much hatred. Look, bias is a feature of every society. Mm-hmm. It is a feature of mankind. Mm-hmm. This country and this Constitution is the best, armor we have against that. So, mm-hmm. I totally liked the interview, and thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you. And yes, as much as I lean more to the right, I always say, thank God that there is a competition of ideas in this country where people from the right and the left can go at each other's throats and then go have a beer, and no one's throwing in a re-education camp.
Amen.
That's what's beautiful. Thank you, sir. You're a patriot. You are Paul Revere 2.0. Instead of the redcoats, it's the Chi-Coms. But I loved your book. Thank you so much for doing this, sir, and God bless.
Thank you. All right.
Goodbye. You have a good one. Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. 72 servings per pail. 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner, Clayton, on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com